Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday indeed.
Yeah,
Glad you're here.
White Hat Wednesday, and we have kind of straight line, but yet we always flow in some of those White Hat Way type of things in it. And
so we're going to talk Buy Here, Pay Here accounting, but we're going to kind of bring a white hat perspective to the whole conversation. And so there's that. Let's get some announcements done.
I think TIADA is most people are heading home.
Yeah,
and I hope you guys had a great conference. We saw some different social media posts and there was a photo that Scott Shemrell from NEO posted with a lot of faces and names. If you're part of Buyer Payer Success, there were some names that you see all the time. So it was really cool to see these familiar faces for us and up on stage.
Shout out to those people. We saw several familiar faces in that photo. And then I saw that Vicki Davis was moved from president-elect, I think, into the president's chair. So
congratulations, Vicki.
Yeah, we just had a chance to meet Vicki at the NIADA convention in June. So glad to see her step into that role. And she is surely aware that Jim and Michelle are happy to support the Texas Association.
Anything, just let us know.
Yep, anything we can do.
Absolutely.
So last night, our V8 meeting for Group 4, and I will just share that we do have seats available in the 100 to 500 account range. So if anybody's got an interest in one of those, jump in there.
And we are like really close to opening up a second, or that's the
it's like there
500
we've got
to
enough.
2,000.
We now look for commitments from 4 dealers before we start a group officially,
so
and so we've
rich
got
conversation.
it looks like we're starting a group with that 500 to 2,000 account range, and so that's we've got dealers ready to step in on that. But the reason that's significant is we had our meeting last night with Group 4, and this thing around accounting and cash flows very much became part of our conversation, and it just affirmed that this conversation needs to happen. It needs to continue to happen. We need to make sure providers are aware of what dealers really could use in terms of information to manage their business. So look for us to continue that conversation. We need to make a note that we have a special guest in the studio.
She's off to my left. We brought Jim's mom home with us from New Mexico when we were there for a wedding.
She's from Oklahoma.
She's
visiting from Oklahoma, but we were at a wedding last weekend, and she rode back with us. So
it's her first time in the northern. She's been to Moab, northern part of the state. Had a lot of fun with her yesterday, and we visited all of my old hunting grounds from when I lived up in the mountains, and showed her the mountains and ski resorts and all that kind of stuff. And it was fun. We had a really good time. So really
she's
grateful to have her here.
She's not on the microphone. She's not on the camera, but she is on the headphones this morning. So happy to have her here with us.
Absolutely.
See what we do.
So accounting. Can I one thing that I've observed, I'm the one that married into Buy Here, Pay Here. It's relatively new, to me, but I've observed as we've brought on new clients and that one of the big conversations to have is around how you account for different things, cash flow, all of that. And what I've observed personally is that there are so many dealers out there that are using the accountant their dad had, or using the accountant that is it from their hometown, or using the accountant that they're a great accountant.
Yep. And
so for those of you that are listening that are new, great accountants are great accountants for a normal business.
For a normal business.
Yeah. But it is a very, very different world in the world of Buy Here, Pay Here accounting.
It is. It's not like if you're in a business where your sales are in cash, you open a taco stand, you buy some stuff, you buy your ingredients, and you sell your tacos, and you collect the cash, and at the end of the day, you're done. You know how much ahead you are behind, right? In our business, we have this thing called phantom profit, right? So let's talk about that for a minute. So in Buy Here, Pay Here, for those who've been around it, they've heard these expressions, but I think for those that are new, when you hear phrases like phantom income or paper profit, it's this notion that we buy a car for X, we sell it for Y. The IRS treats that
as a
profit
yeah,
as income
actualized money, right?
They treat it
Yeah.
that way, even though it's paper profit, right? It's not, we don't have any of it in the bank yet. In fact, we're probably negative from a cash perspective. We bought the car for $5,000 as an example. We got $1,000 down. We're negative $4,000 in cash, but the IRS thinks we made profit, right? So
because you just sold the car for $14,000.
Whatever. It's like you marked it up and you have your mark. And so that's why in our business, that's why these related finance companies are in the picture. So there's RFC accounting, but even if you forget the RFC for a minute, just to keep it simple, like just in buy here, pay here alone, if you just had a dealership and haven't yet set up an RFC, then that there's different elements to this, because it's a little like this thing about, so let me ask you this.
So let's just say first, RFC, for those that are new, is a related finance company, and that not every dealership has one, but it's a really great to separate the dealership and the collection side, and how all the money is moving from the people that you've sold the car to.
And that's often primarily a tax strategy for this exact reason, because we have this paper profit that we have not yet, collected. We may never collect it. So we certainly don't want to pay tax on it. So finance companies are taxed differently than dealerships are. And they are taxed as they collect payments instead of being taxed on that,
paper profit.
Unrealized future potential profit is what I usually call it. So an RFC, that's why an RFC becomes an essential thing for a lot of, if you're doing any kind of volume at all. And I would just say, for those not familiar, that's not our subject today, but I would just say that if you're not sure, reach out. I would say that the threshold for starting an RFC is lower than it used to be. Software's easier, it's better. The ability to move from a dealership to an RFC or add an RFC is just a much simpler process than it was when I first got in the business. So just be aware. It could be a part of a tax strategy. But I think for today, just talking about, so I put on the screen here, and I told Michelle I probably missed the opportunity. It would have been a little more provocative to put out as our title.
Jim's always like, "What's a provocative topic?"
I don't do provocative, so at least not in time for the broadcast, right? So
I think we all suffer from that. It's like, oh, dang it! I wish I had said that.
This would have been funny.
This would have been better.
So no, I think in this case, it's I just kind of wanted to put out this idea. I'm not saying that anybody's accounting is wrong, right? I mean, it may be exactly right in the eyes of the IRS. So most accountants or CPAs, they have to have a certain education, and they have to follow, GAAP accounting principles. And so they're probably doing exactly that. I'm not saying that your accounting is wrong. Now, there will be some dealers out there that don't. I've seen stuff that is wrong. They're not handling. In fact, we have a client now that's in a mess because they manage their RFC discounts incorrectly when they set it up. Before we were in the picture, they got some bad advice and did something wrong.
For those of you again that are not familiar, RFC again is the related finance company, and that the dealership will sell the paper to the RFC at a discount, because we all know in this world that it's likely you're not going to collect all of it.
Right.
And so there's already a discount, and that's part of the tax strategy.
And that's because the finance company is acquiring the risk, and so they get it at a discount. But again, that's not really our subject today. But look at you learning RFC.
I mean, I'm sitting here, especially having my mother-in-law sitting next to me. It's like, I'm aware that there's a lot of dealers out there that are new. And so when things come and I hear things that are like, okay, I bet you there's a lot of people out there that don't know what an RFC is, or how that transaction happens. So, I mean, I will interject.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So when I say, is your buy here, pay here accounting wrong? I'm not saying it's wrong. It may be exactly right. But what is accounting really there to do? It's mostly there. Why are there CPAs who follow a certain set of rules, a certain GAAP accounting rules? It's because we have responsibility to the IRS. We're taxed on our income. And so we have to calculate our income correctly to report correctly to the IRS. That's the primary role of a CPA. That doesn't help us manage our business. Like what we see in our balance sheet and our financial statement in the buy here, pay here space, while it may be accurate, it's incomplete. It doesn't help us in all the ways that we as dealers, I still say I haven't been a dealer since 2011, but I learned a lot in that time period where I was a dealer.
You've worked with a lot of dealers and understanding, hey, your accountant may need a little training, even though they've been doing this for 30 years. They
Yeah.
made it a little training
And
on buy here, pay
let's
here.
back up and talk a little bit about my own accounting background, because I
Mhm.
think as I speak to this subject, especially on behalf of White Hat Way and on behalf of dealers, I think it's important for people to kind of understand my particular expertise. You know, one accounting class in college, I did fine. I don't remember a lot of the details about that. When I go back into accounting now, and I learned a lot of RFC accounting in my own dealership, and we got the hang of it. And since then, I've worked with lots of dealers in lots of places, and I often, in a contractual arrangement with them, part of the service that we'll provide is I will be a liaison to them in the accounting setup, especially when it's time to set up the RFC. So what do I mean by liaison? I'm the guy who steps in and sits between the dealer and their software and their CPA. And I help them understand, okay, here's how the accounting is supposed to work. And often, you know, this is me being a smart aleck, but often I say, just to kind of drive the point across, is I'm not a CPA, but I have educated a few of them. And
I was waiting for you to say that.
Yeah, it's like it's something I say just to kind of get people's attention, right? Just for fun mostly. But it's like, and it's not that those CPAs are just not familiar with the RFC structure in the way that I have been. And so it's often helpful for me to be able to fill that role. And that's why I say sometimes the joke is, you know, I know enough accounting to be dangerous. But I think in this case, it's more appropriate to say I know enough accounting to be helpful. Like, I think I can help connect the dots between those pieces. And so
I've sat back and watched you do that with some dealers, and they just want to teach their accountant because they know their accountant, they love their accountant, they've worked with their accountant for years, and watched that. And it's just been really, really, when you get to the point where the accountant, the light bulb turns on of, oh, it's because it is a different paradigm in some of that accounting for where money's going.
And it's important to understand that in a lot of the softwares that do some level of accounting, this is important for people to understand. This is where you start to separate DMS. And people are saying, you know, they look at a DMS when they're stepping in the buy here, pay here business, and I want one I just want to stock in the cars, sell the cars, and collect the payments. Well, there's going to come a day you're going to want more than that. And it's hard to help dealers because I'm not in the business of selling software.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to help them understand you're going to grow to a place and you're going to be adding a related finance company. It's only then, perhaps earlier, but certainly then, you're going to realize the limitations in your software are going to cause you a lot of headaches. You're going to go through a lot of aspirin bottles trying to figure out this thing, and your CPA is not going to be much help because they don't know your software and they don't know this accounting side. So it's just an important thing to help dealers really understand. I think for today, it's not so much the software side, but I would say, so my level of accounting experience is such that I'm rusty on debits and credits. I know plus and minus, increase and decrease. Like, when I get in there, I'm not talking in debits and credits. I'm just simply saying what's going to happen is this is what's going to happen on the dealership side. This is how the RFC is going to acquire that potential income, and this is how it's going to become, you know, the next thing. And so I'm basically just walking them through that piece. So I think it's important for people to understand, when I start speaking to accounting, I'm not a CPA. I don't try to be a CPA. I know the difference, but I do know enough to, I think, be able to help dealers connect the dots between what it is they need. And I think for today, last night's V8 meeting, we had this situation. And then I want to also talk about a dealer story. So there's two. There's one from last night. So last night I rolled out for the first time in one of our V8 meetings an illustration of what a cash flow illustration could be month over month. Okay. So we don't, in V8, we don't do financials. We don't capture anything from the P&Ls or any of the expenses. It was purposeful. We didn't want to wait for accountants and CPAs to finish financials before we could have our composite ready. So your quote unquote composite, ours is different, but we do have all of the incoming cash. We capture all the information on down payments and car payments collected and other types of transactions. So we have that information. So now I've been sharing with dealers, if you guys would provide me a quarterly financial, just give me a quarterly profit and loss report, we could take those expenses and I could take the cash that's coming into the operation and show you the incoming cash. And now we could start to show, okay, this is what we're spending to replace cars every month. I have that information in the V8 report. And now if we just had expenses from the operation, we can put in front of dealers every month, month over month, based on rolling averages. Here's what your cash flow looks like in your business now. And for example, in the meeting last night, we used just example numbers because I don't have their P&Ls yet. But imagine being able to say to a dealer, according to this calculation, at your current volume of sales and at
Mhm.
your current average down payment and at your current expense structure, you are 19 accounts away from being positive in cash. Just think about that.
That's pretty powerful. I mean, it's
Like
yeah.
dealers don't get to see that
It's
information.
like all I need to do is this, and
Yeah, and so
then we're in positive cash.
you're
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you can dig through your profit and loss and balance sheet. You will not find that information. It's not there. Now so you
Mhm.
don't have it because the income's not reported in the same way. And so, you get in this whole thing about cash versus accrual accounting. And so now this is why, we kind of have to do accrual accounting and buy here, pay here in certain scenarios. Like, again, I'm not a CPA. I don't know those
Mhm.
particular rules, but I'm just saying accrual accounting is sort of like, so in a case of accrual,
Mhm.
it's back to that example of you buy the car for $5,000 and you sell it for $8,000. There's $3,000 of gross profit, even though we haven't collected it yet. That's accrual accounting would say we owe that $3,000. If you're doing cash
Or
accounting,
on that 3,000.
yeah, if you're doing cash accounting, then you're just doing the cash and the actual cash transactions, and
Mhm.
so it becomes a different animal. Well, we don't have really a choice in buy here, pay here. We're looking at accrual, but I'm just saying accrual doesn't help us. It reports correctly to the IRS, but it
Mhm.
doesn't help us manage our business. And so now when you start to talk about direct cash flow statements, in my description of the show, I asked, are you familiar with a direct cash flow statement? And I
Mhm.
said, if you're not, I'm not surprised. Like, most people don't hear that. And so back to
Mhm.
my story about my North Carolina dealer, we've got a client we've been working with for a year and a half, 2 years.
Mhm.
And only in the last couple of months have we been able to get to a direct cash flow statement. Why? Because we worked with the CPA. CPA was busy. They didn't quite understand what it is we were looking for. We got some stuff that didn't quite get us there. And so we finally, the last 2 months, May and June, we've been able to give the dealer, here's all your incoming cash. Here's what your CPA tells us you spent in cash buying cars. So this is not what CPAs do. So I think it's important to talk about. When you ask
Mhm.
your CPA for this, understand this is not the kind of service they typically provide. CPAs are in the business of providing accounting. So they
Mhm.
don't provide management reports. And I remember years ago in my own dealership, I
Mhm.
remember having chat conversations with QuickBooks and said, I'm trying to get to a direct cash flow statement, starting bank
Mhm.
balance. Sir, we don't do that. We're not a management system. We're an accounting system. So I'm over here trying to manage my business.
Because there's really nothing out there, is there? That
No.
like a
So what
will
this
do that.
dealer's CPA did, with the help
Uh-huh.
of some of their junior team members, they created that with our instruction, they created a filter that they could export the information from QuickBooks, run it through this filter, and spit out, okay, we spent this much buying cars last
Mhm.
month. We spent this much reconditioning cars last month. We spent this much at the DMV on tag and tax, right?
Mhm.
We spent this much in operational overhead.
Mhm.
Cash. This is how much went out of the bank account. That's what we
Mhm.
need. So what we're trying to help the dealer get to is a place
Mhm.
where here's my opening bank account balance. And
Mhm.
I'm typically looking at it globally. Like, if you're a dealership in RFC, that's just a tax strategy. We just need to look at the whole operation and
Mhm.
look at what was my opening bank balance in all accounts.
Mhm.
How much cash did I bring into those accounts, and maybe some detail on how it breaks out, down payments, principal and interest,
Mhm.
whatever. But certainly I just want to know, how much cash did I bring in? And then how much cash did I shell out? And where did my bank balance close?
Mhm.
So I'm just telling you, that sounds easy.
It's
It's not
not.
out there. It's not out there. And it's like,
Yep.
why is this so difficult? So this is where
Uh-huh.
White Hat Way
Uh-huh.
is going to continue to speak up and say, we
Uh-huh.
got to figure this out.
And so it's that conversation and finding solutions for dealers are on our roadmap. It's like, how do we bring together the right
Yeah.
people, the right whatever it is, so that a dealer can get that kind of information without spending? Because I know with this dealer you were talking about, how many months
Yeah.
and months and months that you two spent with the accountant getting to the point where just the last 2 months they've been able to do this.
And he's thrilled.
And I remember you telling me that
He
he
is
was
thrilled.
just like a face-splitting grin. He
Yeah.
was so excited, hopping out of his seat kind of
Yeah.
thing. It's like, oh my gosh, we got there. And
But it's like,
Mhm.
imagine what it shows the dealer when you can
Mhm.
say, you are 45 accounts away from being positive cash flow. I'm picking numbers here, but just 45 accounts away from being positive cash flow. And he says, yeah, that's great. I can't wait for us to start selling 25 cars a month. Okay. Well, then you'll be 95 accounts away from positive cash flow, right? Because the more you spend on cars, the more cash you're going to shell out. And so
which is so interesting to me, because I hear from dealers, and this is true with a lot of businesses, but especially in ours, is if you're in a money crunch, sell more. If you're in a money crunch, sell more. That selling more will solve your problems. And that is not true.
Yeah. And the old thing I heard way back when I first got into business, you can sell yourself right out of business. Why? Because you use up all your cash. You don't have a place to get more. And so you that doesn't necessarily put you out of business. But if you can't fund the thing, and this is why I say it's cash management. And again, CPAs can spit out typically in their software, they can produce a cash flow statement, but it's not what I'm talking about. It's not what you need. If you go, any dealer can go right now who's on QuickBooks and generate my cash flow statement for June. Try to make some sense of that. It's just not helpful. It doesn't help you with the stuff that I'm talking about. And I think when you start to break it down in terms of number of accounts, and what I was able to show the dealers last night, we took 3-month rolling averages. So we're just saying, not just last month, we're looking at your history, your recent history of performance and rate of cash flow and rate of sales and all these kind of things. This is where you're at. But as of last night, I didn't have it. I was just working with fake numbers because we didn't have, but I was just illustrating for them. If you'll supply me this information, I can give you some really useful data. And one of the dealers from Tennessee, the dealer from Tennessee, this is exactly this would help me a lot.
Yeah.
Because I know, and I also know that dealers, even if they might know how to do what I'm talking about, they could maybe scratch it down on an envelope or whatever, they might get there, but they don't get enough time at their desk.
Yeah.
So this is why we as providers got to create better solutions for dealers so that they can spit that thing out. And we've designed it. We've got the structure to kind of, you refer to the roadmap, like we've designed what it looks like. We're not tech people, but we know what dealers need.
But those of you that have listened for a while, we're trying to create, or we're not trying, we are creating tools and things that will help dealers, because it's not just about who's our client, who's in a V8 group, all of that. And one good example is this report that we're working with the DMSs to create. And we actually got some really great news yesterday about that.
I'll give a quick update. I think Mike Downey just scheduled with me for next week. And so Mike Downey with AMS looks like that's Automaster Systems. Looks like they're going to be the first ones to accommodate our requests. So I look forward to meeting with them. We're going to verify that the numbers are working and that we'll be able to have a chance to roll that out for dealers. So, we'll
have them on the show to talk about it.
That's interesting stuff. Like it's a first step toward
absolutely
helping dealers get to some of the information that they're going to benefit from. And what we're talking about here, it doesn't matter if you're a dealer with 100 accounts or you're a dealer with 5,000 accounts. This information that I'm talking about is just as critical to the small dealer as it is to the big dealer.
So that report, same thing, but also this what you're trying to layer and weave in what's happening in your DMS and what's happening in your accounting to get a really holistic view of what's happening in your business.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this is why I say it's not that our accounting is wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's in most cases it's incomplete. And while your CPA might be able to prepare this for you, just understand it's not typical for them. These are management reports. And so we may pay extra for that if they're willing to do it. But with our North Carolina dealer, the CPA, like I said, they actually took the time, created, the dealer paid extra. And so, but we got it and the dealer is thrilled. Like it's really great information. And we've already talked to that North Carolina CPA about the possibility of them producing the same thing for other dealers that are on QuickBooks, because it's just somebody made the time to sit down and design a filter that would sweep that information and spit out the results.
And I don't know for sure, because I'm not as familiar with DMSs, but the filter sheet that they use is for IDMS.
Yes.
Solera. Yeah. And so I don't know that filter would work for Fraser or work for Dealer Center or work for.
The filter that they create is really for QuickBooks.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't have anything to do with IDMS. I mean, we have what we need from IDMS. I mean, I'm quite familiar with IDMS. So all the incoming cash from the operation, we have that.
Yeah.
It's all the outgoing stuff from the checkbook. And so now just imagine what it looks like for a dealer to be able to say, because you've got internal transactions. You you bought 15 contracts from the dealership into the RFC. So there was a check written for X. Well, there's some accounting that needs to happen there, but globally that doesn't affect us. That's internal money. You write a check from one pocket into the other pocket, and the money globally doesn't.
It's
I'm
not
really talking
moved
about
out
external
globally.
money.
Yeah.
Money that we shelled out to overhead, buying cars, reconditioning cars, overhead that we spent as cash. It's gone. And so that's the part that we're trying to get to the place where we can show dealers exactly what this looks like. And this is why it's such an important conversation, why I thought it belonged in a White Hat Wednesday. It's like White Hat Way is in a position, because of my experience, I recognize better what it is that dealers need, what they could. It's interesting that.
Well, and I know you well enough to know that because you've been a dealer and it hits close to heart, it's like, these are things that would help dealers be better, and have a better view of what's happening in their business, feeling more in control of through an understanding, which will allow them to be able to step into working on their business more instead of being in their business, being able to shift their focus on things that matter in their community, in their business, in their, their teams, their culture. It's just like every little help that we can create so that they stand on firmer foundation, a firmer footing.
Yeah. And I think you know me well enough to know that I don't get angry. I don't show anger. But I think part of what you're seeing in this emotion today is there's a little bit of anger and frustration in it. Like in 2024, the job of buy here, pay here dealers is way more difficult than it ought to be. It's way more difficult. They're taking way more risk, than most dealers. And they're having to get to this information.
Getting slapped for, from other outside entities. It's like, you're getting slapped because you're predatory or whatever, but it's like, they're the ones that are out there willing to take the risk and supply people with vehicles that typically are really bad at managing money.
And we, we did the math in a prior episode, and I've heard for years that dealers in the buy here, pay here segment originate annually about $10 billion. I think.
Did you hear that? I mean, that's a lot of money that comes through.
I think our math was more like 20 to 25 billion. And so it's like just extrapolating from what we know. And
that's a lot of money.
So a lot of money that dealers originate. They're providing a really important solution to consumers who really are in a tough spot and need some help. So this is where I'm saying, for dealers to be able to manage their business better and just let's just let them make their own decision, but get good information in front of them so they can make better decisions themselves and know how they want to run their business, or decisions they want to make, or how many cars they buy tomorrow and what they want to spend for cars and all that stuff. We got to get better information to them. And this is where I'm saying, I look forward to working with Brent Carmichael at NIADA and all the people. Like there's opportunities right in front of us. The software people and the tech people are there. They can produce this stuff for us, and we're just driving the conversation, and we're designing the stuff. I've got this stuff designed in a way that we can help the tech people understand what the opportunity is and how to create that for dealers. And what code is used in the end, it won't be me, but I'm just saying this is what
that's like another conversation with Amanda Sanchez is, can we standardize the coding the accounts?
You and Amanda can work on that. I'm not going to be involved in that. Like, I just think standardizing and buy here, pay here is like, I'm going to be retired before that happens. But I'm just saying that you're not going to get really the standardization, but what you can get is information, because cash is cash. Like I said a while back, the old expression about cash is king. Maybe, but cash is definitely cash. It's not profit. It's not all these other things. It's like it's represented on your balance sheet, and it's like we need to be able to better analyze our cash flows in buy here, pay here. So that's the biggest part of what today is about. If we can, when we tie that back to our P&Ls, like this thing that I'm saying is, if I want a bank statement sort of snapshot that says my bank account's opened at X, which should exactly correlate with my balance sheet, by the way. So if I'm a lender listening today, I'm going to say, yes, your cash, we want to see bank statements match up with balance sheets. If they don't, that's a problem.
And that's something to look at. Yeah.
That's definitely something we want to look at. So we're going to get accounting right. And I'm saying, as we do that, we're going to create management reports that are going to be really useful to dealers, going to be helpful to lenders and all the people that are involved with the dealership on the periphery, then, that's kind of what my drive was for today. And lastly, I just want to throw in a mention about lease year, pay year accounting. We don't have time to get into lease year, pay year accounting. There's a lot about lease year, pay year accounting I do not understand. I've had kind of a peripheral look at that. Different assets. The part that I'm talking about with cash flow is the same. You're buying cars, you're collecting car payments, you have overhead. The lease structure and the lease financials look different. Why? Because instead of a receivable on the balance sheet, we have inventory on the balance sheet. It's okay. It's fine. That's accounting. That's what we have to do to report to the IRS, and that's how lease accounting works. But it doesn't change what I'm talking about from a cash flow standpoint. We buy cars, we recondition cars, we collect a down payment, we collect payments from the customer. Some of it's principal, some of it's interest. Yeah, some of it's called a money factor in a lease instead of interest. It's the same thing. It's like it's cash. We need to be able to account for our cash, knowing this is where we started. This is how much cash came in. This is how much cash went out. This is where we ended. And so when you put that information in front of dealers, they can make better decisions. I promise you, we got to work together to get that stuff in front of dealers.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good conversation. Anything else you want to add before we start?
No, just a reminder about we have, there's not time to get in the group, but we have one more V8 group 3 meeting. That's our beginner group, but we have rooms. We have seats in there. So if you're a newcomer, we just do a little more coaching in that group. So, if that's something you're interested in, you can still get all your numbers and
reach out. Yep. Reach out. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on Wednesday. We got a few more days left in the week, and it's kind of Wednesdays are a lot of times the quieter day, or it's the day that you're at the auction, or things like that. So thanks for listening and making us part of your morning. We will see you on Friday. We're going to go out and do some more sightseeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enjoy your day.
With Mom. Thanks so much for joining us.